All right, I've got 7 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. What the heck is this? All right, I'm going to ask that we start with the invocation this evening. Do I understand it correctly, Mr. Blankenship? You're going to give us the invocation? All right, guys. It's fun and all. We're going to go ahead and start with the invocation. Go ahead and hit your mic if you wouldn't mind.
No, okay. I'm going to pray. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for the blessings you have given to us. We want to thank you for being in this country and for the freedom we have being here. We want to thank you for the opportunity we have to serve our city. And we want to thank you for all that you have done for us. As we approach this holiday season, we thank you, of course, for sending your son Jesus to be with us. We want to thank you as well and pray for you to give us the guidance that we need as we conduct our city business, that you would give us the guidance, the wisdom, the judgment to do what is best for the city. And Lord, as we go into this new year, we ask that you be with our nation, be with our city, be with our state, and give us all your blessings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the December 4th, 2018 regular council meeting. If we could just, let's stand and say a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Mrs. Hoffman, could you please take roll call?
Mr. Burke? Here. Mr. Cahill?
Here.
Miss Kyle? Here. Mr. Skidmore? Here. Miss Suedkamp? Miss Cahill? Here. Mr. Montgomery? Here. Miss Skidmore? Here. Miss Pitts? Here. Mr. Nicely? Here. Miss Fetty? Here. Mr. Blankenship?
All right, we have a quorum. Council, you've received a copy of the minutes of the November 20th, 2018 regular council meeting. Are there any additions or changes to be made at this time? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that we adopt as written. Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Fetty. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carried. All right, let's approve the agenda for this evening. You've got a copy of the agenda for this meeting, the December 4th, 2018 regular council meeting. Are there any additions to be made at this time? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion that we accept as written. A motion by Mr. Burke, second by Mrs. Kyle. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, motion carried. We'll move into the special presentations. First, we've got our business spotlight. We're welcoming the Newcomer Funeral Home here this evening. If you wouldn't mind coming up, Jed, telling us a little bit about Newcomer. Welcome. If you wouldn't mind, there's a little red button on the mic there. There you go.
There, I think I found it. Is that better? Thank you. Again, my name is Jed Dunahay. I'm one of the managing partners and director of community development for Newcomer Cremations, Funerals, and Receptions here in Erlanger, Kentucky. And I also brought with me tonight my colleague and our area manager, Mark Ratliff, who is a resident of Erlanger, and Mark's responsibility is overseeing all the day-to-day operations of our funeral homes in Cincinnati and also here in northern Kentucky. Our company entered this market in in February of earlier this year. And one of the first experiences that I had here was an outreach call that I received from your business development director, David Hahn, and then also from you, Mayor Tyson, Hermes. And out of all the locations that we operate in, that was the first time that I've ever received such a call, and I thought that was very professional and welcoming of you. And since then, we have had a beautiful relationship with the city on all of the departments of the city as well. So with that being said, I also would like to thank the city council members tonight for allowing us this opportunity, and also thank you to those folks that are in attendance. As I said earlier, we entered the Erlanger Northern Kentucky market in February of this year, and we have been overwhelmed with the response that we received from the residents here in the community. To date, we have served nearly 100 families, which is double the projected amount of business that we thought we would experience in such a short period of time. We are located, as you can see, down on South Dixie Boulevard, or South Dixie Highway, and what we have done is renovate the old Aldi's grocery store. This was the third Aldi's that we have actually renovated, and they make a beautiful facility because of the open suspension plan of the building, so we're able to do a lot of things with it. In addition to being a supermarket, there are no stairs, so it's perfectly flat, and we have ample parking. We have parking for over 100 vehicles there on our property. Yeah, the next slide, I would like to maybe illustrate some of the interior. The slide really doesn't do it much justice. I know that looking around tonight and having some conversations, many of you folks have had the opportunity to stop by and see our property. I like to use the phrase that it's non-funereal in nature, and that's for a reason. And the reason being is that this building is open to the community. I alluded to the fact that we have been involved in some special projects here in the community, and most of that's been done with some clergy, some various churches for their fundraisers. We've had a beautiful relationship with the Erlanger Police Department where they have done some selective training there. We've also been involved with the, I believe it was called Fill the Cruiser project, and I believe we're also going to be doing Shop with the Cop this holiday season. So we've had a beautiful relationship there, and having a building that's non-funereal in design, it really allows it to be a little bit more open, a little bit more inviting. It's non-intimidating for our guests and our families that we serve. And as you can see further in our facility, the top slide is one of our arrangement rooms. It's very non-typical of a funeral home that maybe some of you have had the chance to visit. There is no full-size caskets. There is nothing that would be intimidating or overwhelming. I mean, let's face it, nobody gets up in the morning and wants to go to a funeral home. You're there for a reason. We understand that. And so we try to make it as comfortable as we possibly can. We incorporate a lot of technology in the way that we make our arrangements for both cremation and funerals. And the reason for that is that it creates more of an involvement from the family. And we use a lot of words in our company and our business that, as I would say, words have no meaning until people put meanings to words, such as personalization, memorialization, ceremony, visitation, all of those words that I think I know what they mean, but a lot of the families that we work with, they perhaps don't have the same thoughts. And when families come into this environment, they know what they don't want, but they're not sure what they do want. So through technology and through some other things that we do, now we're able to put the meanings to words to where people in families that we serve can now say things like, wow, I didn't know I was able to do that. And as you can see in the middle, we call them garden rooms. We have two such rooms, and this is the actual rooms itself here in Erlanger, and they're very spacious. And one of the things that we do here, and especially in Kentucky and Indiana and southern Ohio, is that when families that we serve, the way that they share with each other is through food. And so we have developed and designed facilities to where families can bring in all kinds of trays of food, hot plates, anything that you can imagine to help facilitate that event. And what I've discovered is that families will go and have these ceremonies and services out of our funeral home and then come back to the funeral home for a gathering or reception afterwards. And then lastly is our chapel. And as you can see, these chairs are not your typical folding chairs. These are chairs much like what you're in tonight. They're padded, they're oversized, and they're comfortable. And they all are able to be moved around, so they're very flexible, and we're able to open up our rooms for a myriad of different functions from our community. But this is what we're all about. We're all about pricing. We started this business model in 1995, and I have been with Ren and Teresa Newcomer now for right at 19 years on November 1st of this year. And back then when I was working with Ren, he had the philosophy that funerals were expensive, and by golly, he was right. And so he started at $1,695 in 1995, and today they're at $2,695. But as you can see how they rank up to other providers here in the Erlanger community, we're able to save hundreds, even thousands of dollars over an apples-to-apples comparison. And as a result, and through the philosophy that we have to where we believe in fairness to every family that we serve, we choose to accept half the profit as other funeral homes. And that's how we do it. That's the number one question that we get when we say that we're over half the price of other providers. They say, well, how can you do that? It's just simple. We just take half the profit and then some. And so we also try to create an environment to where we have exceptional facilities, we have exceptional services, and this creates an exceptional fair price and value to our families, and that's how we grow the business too. In fact, today, we are now located in 10 states. We have 27 locations. We're in 17 communities in these 10 states, and this year we should be serving nearly 14,500 families. And again, we are delighted to be here in Erlanger. We've had our eyes in this community for a long, long time. We have now full-time, we have 6 employees here on the Erlanger property, waiting and able to serve you when the time comes. We know that you have choices in this community, and we just want to do the right things to where we would be considered. And again, Mr. Mayor, thank you, and again, thank you to David Hahn for your gracious acceptance to us here in the community. My colleague passed out booklets. A lot of the things that I talked about tonight are in the folders, and feel free to give us a call for a private tour and answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, we're certainly glad to have you here this evening and glad to have you in the city.
Thank you,
know,
Tyson.
something that you didn't mention this evening that stuck out to me when we met last was that you do something very special. If there's ever something that happens to a first responder in the line of duty, in the event that they should happen to get killed in the line of duty, Newcomer takes care of all the funeral expenses.
Yes, sir.
For those.
It's called our Serve and Protect program. And as we know, as we watch television on a day-to-day basis, we see how tragedies can happen and happen on a large scale. And unfortunately, in our company, we will use this around a dozen times a year for a fallen first responder. And it's kind of sad that we need it, but we're proud to be able to provide it. And that's how we're able to support our community during those struggling times. But thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you for coming out this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark. All right, we've got a couple other recognitions this evening. We've got a certificate in a frame here for Mr. Steve Montgomery, recognizing him for his time here on City Council. Thank you. We've also got another one from Mr. Blankenship, which is a certificate and something a little bit more here. I don't think I'll say what it is, but since Mr. Blankenship has served for more than 10 years, served the city of Erlanger, really it's, what, 14 as council member? We are presenting him this evening, I'll go ahead and say it, with a certificate and a pocket watch. Then moving on, we've got some police recognition this evening. Chief, are you going to start us off?
Good evening. So tonight we have a few awards to give out, recognitions. I'm going to start off with Carolyn Foltz. Carolyn began her dispatch career in 1976 as a dispatcher for Boone County. In 1990, she left Boone County and became a dispatcher for City of Erlanger, where she also served as the dispatch center's TAC officer, terminal agency coordinator. Carolyn was not only a dispatcher, but she was a great friend to every officer that had the pleasure of working with her. I'll go a step farther. It's like having a mother for us as a young officer. Carolyn retired from Erlanger in 2008. She did not stay retired long. She now serves as a part-time clerk out at the Narrows station. Carolyn's dedication, friendship, and positive attitude make an example to all. She has had and continues to have a successful and meaningful career in this field. Carolyn is a dedicated and hardworking dispatcher who serves the community and the police department with pride. So with that, I'd like to introduce, not that you guys don't know her already, but the Kentucky Women Law Enforcement Network President, Jill Stultz, to come up and present to Carolyn.
This award is given to a civilian employee in a law enforcement or public safety organization whose work is in direct support of the profession. Through individual deeds, this person symbolizes dedication to the professional law enforcement and the citizens in the communities in which they serve. This award winner is an individual who has demonstrated exceptional achievement in carrying out their duties. So it is my honor to present Carolyn with the Kentucky Women's Law Enforcement Network Civilian Employee Award.
Well, I just want to thank everybody. This is a great reward. I never dreamed I'd get something like this. If I live till April and don't get fired before April, it'll be 43 years in law enforcement. So I just want to thank.
I just fired her again. Fired her like 10 times, and every day she comes back. Oh, shit. Our other awards tonight were, April 25th. I probably received the worst call I could ever have, especially as a chief, and one that's only been chief for about 4 or 5 months. That call was, we had an officer involved shooting 2 of our officers. Problem was, there's no information to whether they were injured or hurt. We had nothing, just that there was an officer-involved shooting. So, on April, I'm going to read this nomination. On April 25th, 2018, Sergeant Girdler, K-9 ASCO, and Patrolman Pullman responded to Peacock's Bar to assist with the warrant service on suspect Dexter Helton. Suspect Helton was wanted for possession of a controlled substance, methamphetamines, was known to be armed with a handgun, and was observed by officers inside Peacock's Bar. Both Sergeant Girdler and K-9 ASCO were at the rear exterior of the building, business, and Patrolman Pullman was in position on the west side of exterior of the building. Their responsibility was perimeter security, while other officers went inside of the business to conduct a warrant service on suspect Hilton. As officers entered Peacock Bar, suspect Hilton fled the interior of the building, exiting the rear door. As he fled, Sergeant Girdler and Patrolman Pullman immediately confronted suspect Hilton and observed him to be armed with a handgun. Both Sergeant Girdler and Patrolman Pullman gave verbal commands to suspect Hilton to stop and drop the handgun. He refused and continued to flee. It was at this time Sergeant Girdler released K-9 ASCO for apprehension. Suspect Hilton continued and began to run down a concrete staircase behind Peacock's Bar. He was still fleeing and armed when K-9 ASCO engaged him. Suspect Hilton began to fall down the staircase. When he fell to the bottom of the staircase, he pointed his firearm at Sergeant Girdler and Patrolman Pullman. Both officers deployed their issued handgun and fired rounds at suspect Hilton, striking him twice. Once this occurred, suspect Hilton was neutralized and was no longer a threat to officers and the safety of the public. Suspect Hilton was transported to the University of Cincinnati Hospital for treatment, and he remains in custody of the Department of Kentucky Corrections and is recovering from his injuries. Sergeant Girdler, K-9 ASCO, Patrolman Pullman performed their duties above and beyond the call of duty. They exhibited the highest form of bravery and protected themselves, other officers, and the public from a threat of possible severe physical injury or death. You know, you see these videos out there of these shootings. Unfortunately, we can't release ours yet. But when you see it, you're going to see what is textbook and how they represent the city of Erlanger. So with that, I'd like to ask Patrolman Pullman, K-9 ASCO, and Sergeant Girdler come forward to be awarded the Medal of Valor. Here, got it. Got it. Let me hold one. Oh. We're going to allow Sergeant Girdler to pin ASCOs on him. Just for our safety. With that, I'd also like to mention the guys that were on the inside going in, Officers Osterbrook, Lyle, and Ellison, brain fart, Ellison, for their duty and helping with this. You know, these guys really acted an amazing bravery. For when you see this video, you'll understand. I thank you, gentlemen, for your bravery. You guys want to say anything?
Thank you. I'd like to thank City Council for the recognition, but just as importantly, I'd like to thank my peers for those that were working that night and for those that followed up with phone calls and visits to the house. You know, the numerous things that occur when you know that there's a brotherhood that comes into play there. I've been blessed to wear many hats for this agency in nearly 28 years now. I feel like my role to this point is more supportive than anything else. But I can tell you that your agency worked flawlessly that night. Everybody came together, you know, through the entire investigation, and again, the follow-up phone calls and the messages that we received. I'm just proud to be part of this agency. I want to extend my thanks also to Sergeant Gertler for the amount of work that we knew that he had to do that night, and all the follow-up that he had to do as well. Thank you.
This is just an example of the dedication that the city and the police department has towards the training and education of our guys. Couldn't have done it without it. And it's the reason why we come out and we're able to do what we're able to do at a moment's notice. We know that it's a risk, and that we're ready to take it. Thank you.
That is all we have, sir.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for keeping us safe. All right, next on the agenda is the citizen and public comments. Is there anyone signed up this evening to speak? I don't know if anybody's getting that list or not. Mr. Hahn, is the sign-up list back there? All right. We've got Mr. Donahue from the Newcomer Funeral Homes. I assume you were referring to this. You didn't have anything else you wanted to speak about, did you? Okay. And then we've got Mr. Meyer. Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else that didn't get a chance to sign up that would like an opportunity to speak this evening? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to the mayor's report. Well, you know, it's been an absolute honor to have had the opportunity to serve as mayor to the people of Erlanger over the past 4 years. It's been a busy time, and so much has been accomplished. I'm eternally grateful to the Erlanger residents for giving me the opportunity as mayor, and look forward to continuing to serve on city council. I've truly met some of the greatest people, some absolute blessings to the city and to humanity out in our community. The words thank you don't begin to explain the gratitude, but thank you. On December 17th at 11:30, Transitions will be having their ribbon cutting ceremony. This is a kind of a rare opportunity. It's the first type of treatment facility like that in this area. They're going to begin to serve women and even pregnant women and men as well out of that new facility, which used to be the Pleasure Isle facility. And we've got an opportunity to be able to tour that on December 17th at 11:30. From that time on, it's going to be kind of difficult to get back into that facility if you ever want to see it, you know, because of the treatment of the people and privacy and HIPAA and things like that. So I would certainly encourage council to please try to make time in your schedule to see it then, and also would welcome people from the public as well to come out and take a look, see what it's all about. Then the next day, Tuesday the 18th, we'll be having our committee meeting here. I don't know how much of a committee meeting we're really going to have, but we will have the swearing in of the new mayor and council members. There will be a photographer on hand that evening to update photos or take photos of newly elected officials, as well as taking a group photo. So please dress accordingly, and hopefully we can all be here for that evening. And with that, that's all I have to say this evening. We'll move on then to the reports of committees. First up, we've got the police with Ms. Suedkamp and Mrs. Kyle.
Yes, since we have a busy agenda, I'm just going to read the highlights because you all should have a report in your emails. This is the monthly highlights. Erlanger officers attended the Special Olympics bowling. And then we also had about 40 people take our new hire test, and those who passed were interviewed. We had coffee with a cop at Frisch's, and I just want to remind people that not only can you interact with our police department, but as a council person, when I go to those, I can react with the citizens too, and I really look forward to those. Occasionally I can't get to one, but the ones I've attended have been very well attended. Our PD participated with FOP Lodge 55 on the annual food drive at Remke's and did a phenomenal job. Our detectives made an arrest on a month-long sex offense investigation, and I think we reported on that last month. And officers arrested a subject who had fled several months ago. Also, I just want to remind people that this coming weekend, December 8th, Saturday, it's going to be Cocoa with a Cop. And you can bring your families to that, and at the same time see the train set up that we have this weekend. So it would be this Saturday, just in case you didn't see it. And then one last request. We are looking for citizens who would like to attend the Citizens Police Academy. If you've not done so, this is really a wonderful thing to attend. Ms. Suedkamp and I, we always brag. We were the first ones. We were in the first academy. And I was telling our chief this evening that not only do you learn about the police department, but you actually learn about the whole system. I mean, you know, you have judges come in, jailers, the whole 9 yards. So if you've never been to one and you can afford the time, please, please sign up, because we are looking forward to holding another one of these. And that's all I have.
I just wanted to thank Chief Brindle for making me cry again. I am so proud to be a part of this city. Your guys are heroes, and they're well-trained, and phew, it's unbelievable. Speaking of somebody being well-trained, I would like to, since it wasn't in the report, congratulate Raven Kane, who was sworn in as a Covington police officer this week. And she was a former dispatcher here, and just an awesome young lady. And so I just wanted to give kudos to her. And I don't know if this is a good time to bring this up, but I'm going to anyway. I am collecting donations for the Erlanger Resource Center, and they have expressed a real need for hygiene products for their families. And I've had people dropping stuff off at my door. Like, I'm going to have to get a truck, I think, to get it to Tishner. But everybody, and I'm still getting phone calls. I've got another family coming tomorrow night. And I thought this was just really the neatest thing. I happen to know this family, but I've never met their youngest daughter. But apparently they were trying to teach her about giving back. And so she and her friends got together, and they put together packets for needy families, and they're going to give them to me to give to the Resource Center. And with parents like that, our world is going to turn out okay. And I think that's I apologize for being late. I went to my grandson's basketball game.
Well, you know, this is probably not the perfect time either to mention this, but, you know, speaking of parents that are raising their kids right and teaching them about giving, there was a great article about your son-in-law in the news and your daughter. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I would love to say something. This was just crazy. My son-in-law lost, was it $1,200 or $1,500, and didn't tell anyone because he was embarrassed that he had lost that much money. And it was cash. And so anyway, some good Samaritan turned the money into Kroger's, which is just unheard of. And I understand that the mother did that to teach her child that that was the right thing to do. And at Christmas time, and they're not wealthy, and that could have really made a big difference in their lives at Christmas time. So anyway, unbeknownst to her, this was the money that James had set aside to give to needy families. So I just found that to be so ironic. And to make it even more so, I happened to share Sergeant Claire's Facebook about the money, not even knowing he had lost it, nor did his wife or anyone else. So anyway, so I passed this on to all my Facebook friends, and James happened to see it. And he thought, no, that can't possibly be my money. Well, lo and behold, they had him on camera at Kroger's and saw, you know, whatever. So he has donated $200 of that money to Shop with a Cop. He's donated another $200 to the Erlanger Lions. He also gave a reward to the lady that he gave to me, and I dropped off at the police department. So there is a lot of good in this world, people. And Erlanger, there's just no place in the world like it as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Thank you.
It just
for telling the story.
made everything. It was just a great Christmas.
Thank you.
And the chief's in the house.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chief. All right, then Fire EMS, Mrs. Pitts, Mrs. Fetty.
Well, that's hard to follow up on, but okay. I'll do my best. Just a few highlights here, too, also. They had a lot of training this month. One of the things they trained on was cancer awareness. The past 25 years, 11 of our firefighters, current and former, have had cancer, so they received some training on that. They also attended a human trafficking class to make them aware of signs of possible human trafficking so they can see any signs and so they could report it or whatever, just to be on the lookout for. Community involvement, they also were at the Super Bowl helping with that, the senior luncheon, and our honor guard was at the Bengals-Browns game to present the American flag, which that's pretty cool. Also, and I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this right, they purchased two, it's called Physio Control Lucas devices. What those are is they perform fast, deep compressions in CPR, and they're apparently very effective, which would free up one of our firefighters to do other needed critical care on that patient. So it's fortunate they were able to purchase two of those. And Chief Whitaker's in the house. Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you. And next, we've got Public Works, Mr. Cahill, Mr. Skidmore.
So we do have a couple highlights we'd like to talk about. The Narrows Nelson Road Improvement Project. So the asphalt base layers have been installed. Concrete curb and sidewalks will be completed this week. The final surface asphalt to be placed next as the weather permits. So we're looking probably at the road opening back up mid to late December. So we're hoping for a little bit sooner than that. Alpha Court project is complete and Beta Court's been moved to the spring due to the weather.
Yes, and the leaf collection, they're on their last round through the city. It should end this week. The crews are on schedule. The tree debris from the pickup of the November 15th storm, Public Works crews have visited over 200 residents picking up debris. Many residents dropped off debris at the Public Works facility. This program is now complete. Street sweeping, the next round of street sweeping scheduled for December the 10th through the 14th. And Mr. Glenn is in the house. Have anything to add? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Peter. All right, then administration, Mrs. Skidmore, Mrs. Cahill. Kathy, if you wouldn't mind hitting your mic.
Gotcha. Sorry. Upcoming events, the holiday train display is at the City Building on 12/7 from 1 to 8 p.m., on 12/8 from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and 12/9 from noon to 4, and the 12/8 one from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., like Vicki had said, is also from 10 to 12 is Cocoa with a Cop. So you can see the train display and you can have Cocoa with a Cop in one fell swoop. If you want to see these dates and times, just look on the Facebook page and you can find out the times and if you didn't hear everything then. And Renee?
All right. The general government offices will be closed on December 24 and 25, 2018, and January 1st, 2019. Waste collection will not occur on December 25th, 2018, or January 1st, 2019, but will resume on the following days with a one-day delay. Now, since January 1st is a holiday, I would like to make a motion to not hold the regular council meeting on January 1st and hold it instead on the third Tuesday, January the 15th, with a committee meeting to follow.
All right, we've got a motion, a second by Mrs. Pitts. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Not at all. No, the committee meeting afterwards what threw me off. Right. Yeah, I know. I was just giving funny looks. It's all good. It's all good.
Well, you know, it would be a long time to go without a committee meeting because we didn't have one in, we didn't really have one in November, and yeah, then we'll have the swearing in this month, so yeah. All right, let's see, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, motion carried. Thank you. And Sherry's in the house?
I have nothing further, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, then Finance and Business Development, Mr. Blankenship and Mr. Montgomery.
Thank you. The auditors are still currently working on the draft of the comprehensive annual financial report. The statement for October is in the process of being completed, and the October financial will be distributed once they're complete. Staff is going to be working on the budget for the fiscal year 2020, and will be distributing a budget calendar in the coming weeks. In addition, the budget request worksheets will be sent to the department heads so that they can begin the preparation of their proposed budgets. That's all I have, Steve. Ms. Bodie?
Thank you. And we've got Codes, Building, and Zoning, Mr. Burke, Mr. Nicely.
We don't really have a report. Mr. Hahn did send out the reports to everybody by email. If you got any questions, get a hold of Dave Hahn, and Mr. Hahn is in the house. Good to go. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So you've heard the reports of our committees. Do I entertain a motion that we adopt as presented? Motion by Mrs. Fetty, second by Mrs. Suedkamp. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, motion carried. Are there any reports from our representatives this evening? Go ahead, Mrs. Skidmore. I saw you first.
All right, the Kenton County Alliance meeting was today from noon until 1. There were almost 50 people at the meeting today. Food was furnished by Colonial Cottage. This meeting was focused on the recognition of the students to stay drug-free and set examples, good examples. Four of the local high schools participated: Lloyd, Dixie, Ludlow, and Notre Dame Academy. The administrators were very vocal about the idea that choosing the winners of this event was very, very difficult. Not only was the students' work and creativity judged, but the students were also judged on how they interacted with others and how well the students could interact with others. Some of the slogans that were used with the pictures were: basketball, it's a slam dunk to avoid alcohol. Football, our goal is to stop underage drinking. The referee, make the right call, avoid using drugs and alcohol. And then I brought one with me, and it is stay united against drugs and alcohol. And if you'll notice, they're linking arms. And if you'll also notice, Paige Hoffman is right there, and that is Sherry's daughter. And these messages will also be seen on the tank buses for about 6 months. 2 million people see these buses every day. And Todd Rice, Sherry Hoffman, Judy Bauer, Erlanger Vips member, and volunteers were also in attendance. So, end of report. But I thought that was just really, really neat that they had these, and these weren't very heavy. So, okay.
Are there any other reports? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. To the reports of city operations. First, we've got our city engineer, Mr. Viox.
Thank you, sir. I'd just like to say that you heard the report of the Public Works Committee regarding the Nelson Narrows Road intersection project. I'd like to point out that the contractor, Erlanger Construction Company, along with our Public Works Department, has done a heck of a job to get that done anywhere close to being on time, recognizing the severe weather conditions we've had since we started that project. I really didn't anticipate we would accomplish it. And last week when I talked to Ed at the Public Works Department, he confirmed that Erlanger made the commitment they would get it done. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Great point. All right, we've got our city attorney, Mr. Gatlin.
Thank you, Mayor. On legislation tonight, we have 2 second readings. We have the second reading of the State Building Code. Again, this is just a housekeeping matter where Kentucky adopted about 4 or 5 months ago some changes to their building code, and we want to be able to enforce those changes. So this is a second reading to adopt the standardized Kentucky building code changes. The second item are the ADM incentives. It's always exciting, I think, when you can offer incentives to businesses, and that is a second reading. which will be applying a credit of its occupational license fee for new employees as part of an economic development program. Again, that is a second reading. And then we have a first reading on a budget amendment. It's a little unique to do a budget amendment kind of at this time, but for a variety of reasons it was decided to do it. And you can see that I think there might be a little discussion maybe in Matt's report, but it all has to do with adding to the police budget, and you can see that it's not that significant of a change. We then have the normal housekeeping municipal orders as they relate to board appointments. And that is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, we've got our city administrator, Mr. Kramer.
Thank you, Mayor. Sent out a couple emails this week. One was today was Commonwealth School Zone. If you look outside on Commonwealth, they have drilled and have poured 2 piers that are going to support the poles that will be holding the new school zone in that area. So we're making a little bit of progress there. Obviously, I'll update the more that happens with that. In terms of grants, we received at the end of last month a $3,000 grant that Chief Brendel actually brought to Ed Bailey's attention, and Ed wrote the grant and was able to get it approved. So some great teamwork between both departments. In 2018, Ed Bailey has written grants for the city and has been awarded over $221,000 so far. So I say so far because we still have 20-something days left, so we're hoping a couple more come in. But done a great job, and between him and the fire department's grants, we've had a very successful year with the city of Erlanger on grants. So that's a good thing there. The police department budget amendment. We planned on having the first reading last meeting. We had some issues with the numbers. We wanted to make sure that they were correct, so we did push it. I do apologize that it's going between councils. If that's an issue with the new council, we can talk about that next month, but I think it's important to get it going now. They've got some really good applicants that they had interviewed, and then this is to add the 2 officers, and that's going to also support, we have a grant still running for the officers that we've had. What's that grant called? COPS grant, sorry. Oh, sorry. Thanks for making me look stupid. But with the COPS, we do have the COPS grant going on right now. With losing Crescent Springs, there were some issues, possible issues with the federal grant, since we did have to lower the numbers due to losing that contract. And the additional officers fit anyway because of the operational tempo that they've had with the new ECAT team. But it really fit in and actually supported that COPS grant to make sure that there was no question that the federal government wouldn't think we would have defaulted on that grant or anything. So it's a really good timing. Generally, we do wait until the actual new budget year, but because of the success of ECATs, I do think it was a good thing. So I do apologize for it being the first reading tonight. The only other thing I have is Frank Wickman did resign from both his legal contracts with the city on November 29th. As council knows, the staff is working with Wickman and Associates to close out their accounts, and we'll have more information here in the next couple weeks and by next month. Mayor Hermes did sign a contract with Jack and Gatlin Volker to provide all legal services for the city of Erlanger this week. Pending your questions, Mayor or Council, that's all I have.
Seeing none, we'll move on. You've heard the reports of the representatives and city operations. Do I entertain a motion that we adopt as presented? Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Pitts. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All right, motion carried. Next, we've got our correspondence. Mrs. Hoffman, is there any correspondence to review this evening?
Yes, sir. The fire department, specifically Chase Autry, Rick Bowl, and Mark Audie, received a thank you note from Joe and Linda Hamilton. They wanted to thank them for coming out to their house last week during the power outage. They thanked them for taking the time to provide the generator. It was such a wonderful art of kindness. We were able to charge our phones and receive calls from the hospice team. Thank you for serving our community, wishing you a safe holiday season. And we also received a letter from Rebecca Reckers, who just recently got elected to serve on council for the next term. So she resigned her position on the local appeals board.
All right, thank you. I'm trying to do too much at once. All right, then we've got the bids. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Go ahead.
Mine's all verbal.
Okay.
First, I want to say thank you to Randy Blankenship and to Steve Montgomery for all they've done for the city, and I wish them well. And also, I received probably a couple dozen phone calls, messages, and everything else from residents thanking Public Works for picking up the debris after the ice storm. They just couldn't believe that that service was offered, and they were thrilled to death, and I just wanted to make sure they were aware of all the kudos. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That really was, I mean, I still can't get over that. Taking on a ton of work in, one of the busiest seasons between the leaf collection and preparing for the snow and salting streets and everything else. So, yeah, really incredible. Thank you. Any other comments or correspondence? All right, we'll move on then to the bids. We've got the fire EMS radio bid. Mrs. Hoffman, Mr. Bia, or no, Mr. Let's see, who is reading this? Oh, okay. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just here doing this, seemed like not long ago. Have you ever looked at something so many times that you step aside, you come back, and you see something different that you didn't see the first time? You do it again, you do it again. It's like those pictures that you look at that kind of change each time. And that's what we did with the bid. We made a mistake. I sat here last month and gave you some calculations as follows, and they were incorrect. And I'm going to try to explain that tonight. Hopefully we can clear this up and put this bid to bed. Last month, I let everybody know that the Motorola bid was $177 and the Harris was $204. Showed a difference of $27,000. The updated and correct numbers are as follows, and that's what I'm going to show you how we came up with those numbers. Motorola final cost, $173,909. The Harris cost is $162,17. Difference of $13,692. And for those that don't remember, Motorola is the way we want to go. So if we agree to this tonight, it's going to cost us $13,692 more than Harris. But let me explain why we prefer Motorola. First, I'll explain how we made the mistake. How did we miscalculate? You have in your packets two spreadsheets with the identical costs running down of each vendor's numbers. The Motorola portable came in at $2,700. Down at the bottom of that, they gave us a trade-in of $150 per radio. So basically, the Motorola portable is $2,600. Harris bid it a little differently. They bid their portable at $3,296, but then they traded in the amount of the current radios at $1,000. Upon first looking into that, we thought the $1,000 was the total amount of trade-ins. Our radios aren't worth $1,000. So we assumed, we made the mistake. So that was that's where we miscalculated our numbers. That is a per radio cost. So after the trade-in value, their portable comes in at $2,200. Bottom line, Motorola discounted the portable radio cost up front as opposed to the trade-in value. Harris just raised the trade-in value as they did not discount the portable cost. Does that make sense? And I'm sorry, we had a difficult time in determining and just digging through these bids, but that is why we miscalculated. So if that's clear, now I can go on to why we prefer Motorola and why I'm asking for council's recommendation on this. And you'll have all this information in your packets as well. The Motorola microphone, heat resistant to 500 degrees. And we can't put those up at the same time, so what I'll do is I'll read the Harris comparable statistics. Oh, you can go back and forth? Okay. Heat resistant to 500 degrees, heat resistant to 320. Go back to the Motorola. A channel selector knob that allows personnel to easily change channels. Now, granted, we have one dispatch center, but we work with Boone County. We have to have access to change our radio channels. You'll see the Harris microphone has no channel selector available on the microphone. Push to talk is recessed to prevent accidental key ups. You'll see the little recessed area there. If you go to the Harris mic, it requires both buttons to have to be pushed. It's very unconventional for us and something we're not used to. Some of the other items, the emergency button is large, yet it's protected. It's the orange button on top. In case we were to have a mayday, a firefighter in distress, we can simply push that button, but it's not activated. The emergency button is large on the Harris down at the bottom left, but it's not very well shielded. And when you're crawling, turning, twisting, has a greater chance of activation. And understand, once an emergency activation is pushed, it sets a lot of things in place. So that's not something you want to push if it's not necessary. And specifically cost on this, the Harris mic was $630 and the Motorola mic was $400. I didn't add this in here, but the SCBAs that we received a $170,000 grant for, they're Bluetooth capable with Motorola. They are not Bluetooth capable with Harris. So just yet another reason of why we're asking for $13,000 more to get the Motorola radios. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
So when you looked at this, what did your team compose of that looked at the differences between the Motorola and the Harris without the cost? Who composed the team?
The committee?
Yes.
Yes, Deputy Chief Stewart, Assistant Chief McQuarrie, Lieutenant Gotze, I believe, and Lieutenant Randy McMullen. I formed the committee to make sure that we were able to get some demos from Motorola. We were not able to secure any demos for Harris.
Okay.
During the List family property teardown, we got to do a lot of work with the SCBA manufacturers to test them at perfect timing. We did test Motorola at that time, but we couldn't really field test the Harris.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions for Chief? All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
Great presentation. Thanks for that explanation.
Thank you.
We'll do that now, or are we doing that in legislation? Okay.
Okay, so we'd like to make a motion to accept the Motorola bid.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Mr. Montgomery? Ms. Fetty? Mr. Blankenship? Mr. Skidmore? Ms. Suedkamp?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Kyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke? Mr. Nicely? Ms. Cahill? Ms. Pitts?
All right, motion carried to accept the Motorola bid. Thank you. Then next we've got is there any old business to discuss? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there any new business? Go ahead, Mrs. Fetty, I saw your hand first.
I just wanted to quickly let everybody know that Silver Lake is holding a hiring event tomorrow night and Thursday night from 6:30 to 8. They're in need of approximately 30 more employees to get started with the new addition. So please let any high schoolers, any freshmen or sophomores in college, there are jobs available.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Suedkamp, I saw your hand as well.
Yes, I did, for the donations for the Family Resource Center. My address is 314 Graves Avenue, beautiful downtown Erlanger, and I've got a big porch, so bring it on.
Thank you, good point. All right, any other new business? Thank you, both of you. All right, then we'll move on to legislation. The first is an ordinance regarding the state building code. This is a second reading.
This is an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, amending Section 150.30 and Ordinance 2390 relating to 815 KAR 7120 of the Kentucky Building Code and 815 KAR 7125 of the Kentucky Residential Code, as adopted by the Department of Housing, Buildings, and Construction of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. By summary, we are amending the current ordinance to adopt the 2018 Kentucky Building Code, which adopts the 2015 International Building Code, the 2012 NFPA, the 2015 International Mechanical Code, the 2009 International Energy Compliance Code, and the 2012 International Energy Compliance Code. Please do not ask for any details on those codes. But I bet you Mr. Hermes probably, as a building contractor,
I'll tell
could
you how
help
many
us.
pages each one of them is.
This is a second reading.
All right, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fetty,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Pitts. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Cahill.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Burke. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Kyle.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Suedkamp.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Skidmore.
All right, motion carried. Next one is another ordinance regarding the ADM incentives. This is another second reading.
This is an ordinance of the City of Erlanger, Kentucky, providing for a credit of its occupational license fee for new employees as part of an economic development project by Archer Daniels Midland Company under the Kentucky Business Investment Program, KRS 154.32, subsection 10 through 154.32, subsection 100. As discussed earlier, this is a 1% credit that will be split between the City of Erlanger and Kenton County, with a 0.94% credit of the occupational license fees for a 10-year period for the City of Erlanger and a 0.06% to Kenton County, totaling a 1% credit locally. This local credit will cause a 3% Kenton personal income tax credit on such new jobs under KBI, and this is a total 4% credit.
All right, here again, we'll take another roll call vote. Do a motion, second. Oh, excuse me, I need a motion. Got myself carried away. All right, we've got a motion by Mrs. Kyle and a second by Mrs. Pitts. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Fetty.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Blankenship. Mr. Skidmore. Ms. Suedkamp.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore. Ms. Kyle.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Burke. Mr. Nicely. Ms. Cahill. Ms. Pitts.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery.
All right, motion carried. Next is another ordinance regarding the PD budget. This is a first reading.
It's an ordinance of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, amending Erlanger Ordinance Number 2469 and the budget adopted thereby for the City of Erlanger for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2018 and ending on June 30th, 2019. This is an amendment of the budget, and if you look at the Excel spreadsheet that is attached, the budget that has been amended has been struck through with the new numbers on the right-hand side, and highlighted are the ones that have been affected. This is a first reading.
All right, so I just asked Mrs. Hoffman to note the reading of that in the minutes. Next then is a municipal order regarding the appointment to the Local Appeals Board.
So municipal order of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, approving the appointment of Mike Stubblefield as a member of the Local Appeals Board for the City of Erlanger to fill the vacancy therein, resulting from the resignation of Rebecca Reckers effective January 1, 2019.
All right, do we have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Fetty, second by Mrs. Pitts. I don't know if council would be interested or not. I'd be happy to read a brief bio of Mr. Stubblefield, if you'd like to hear it. I don't see any heads nodding. Yes, okay, yeah. Welcome. Didn't see you back there till just now. Then let's go ahead and, we've got a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and have a roll call. Question, discussion? Okay. Okay, sure. Yeah, let's have a.
Quite a few to go through.
Okay, you're right. It's Dancing with the Stars on?
No, I just.
All right, got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried.
Now I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
All these other appointments, did all these people resign?
No, they did not.
So were they asked if they want to stay on?
No, I did not ask them. I know we're talking about the Code Enforcement Board. There are two members there. There's Mr. Hubert Miller and Mr. Earl Franks, who both served on that board for a number of years. They've served multiple terms. I do believe that when they were asked to serve initially, they knew what the terms were. They've done a great job serving, so I don't want to mislead you to believe that they have done anything wrong, but I do also want to make sure that people understand that you don't have to break the law, you don't have to move out of Erlanger, and you don't have to die to get off of a board. It is an appointment, and we do have a lot of people that are interested in serving on boards, and this is an opportunity to give more people a chance to serve their community.
Well, my opinion is I think you should ask every one of these if they want to stay on or not.
We've done that in the
I'll
past.
be voting no on every one of these.
Okay.
If they wasn't asked.
Okay.
That's just my way I feel.
I totally agree with you, Kevin.
It is an appointment.
That's
And
fine.
this is a great opportunity to be able to give people a chance to serve their
That's
community.
fine. That's not a problem. We can.
My
vote on
feeling
it.
was that I did not necessarily want to talk to them ahead of time. For all I knew, that council may decide that they want to keep those folks, though I'm not going to be recommending that. I'm not going to be appointing. That's not going to be my appointment. So I figured I would talk to them after and thank them for their service and let them know that we appreciate it and that we're going to be appointing someone else.
Okay, we'll go ahead with it.
Okay. All right, so the next one is the appointments to the Code Enforcement Board, municipal order.
It's municipal order of the City Council of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, approving the appointment of Denise Sterbling and Gary Wilt as members of the Code Enforcement Board for the City of Erlanger effective January 1, 2019. These terms run through December 31, 2021.
All right, so I've got a brief bio here on Denise Sterbling. I'll go ahead and read, and she is in the audience this evening. Denise Sterbling is a lifelong resident of Erlanger and graduate of Lloyd High School. Married for 42 years to Mike Sterbling, also a lifelong resident of Erlanger and a graduate of Lloyd High School. Denise was previously an administrative assistant to the vice president of Federated Department Stores and later left that job to raise her 4 children, all of whom are graduates of Lloyd High School. She also served as the head of fundraising for Lloyd's marching band boosters and taught first grade Sunday school class at Erlanger Baptist Church for 15 years. Presently, Denise is a ticket taker for any event at the Cincinnati that requires a ticket and was honored by the Cincinnati Reds as their Reds Way All-Star Employee of 2016. In addition to their 4 children and their spouses, Denise and Mike, did I read that right? And their spouses. Oh, yeah. Their children and their spouses, Denise and Mike, are proud grandparents of 7 grandchildren. So, wonderful, thank you. So we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Ms. Suedkamp?
I want to can't believe this is happening. There's something about being proud of being a part of an organization, and especially those people that have served so well for so long. Yes, it's an appointment, but if they are doing the job that they were expected to do, I think the least that someone can do is to ask if they would like to remain in their position. I happen to think the world of Denise Sterling. I don't know these other people. I have nothing against these people that you're recommending, but I am totally against the way this is going down. Totally. I just think it's horrible.
Okay, so we had a chance for discussion, and now it's time for voting, and your name was called first.
I vote no.
Okay.
Mr. Cahill?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Skidmore?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Kyle?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Burke?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Nicely?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Cahill? No, ma'am. Ms. Pitts?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Montgomery?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Fetty? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Blankenship? No, ma'am. Mr. Skidmore?
All right. So let's go ahead and have a little bit more discussion, because I've got 55 other names that I'm going to read here this evening. And if it's, the whole fact is that you're turning this down because I didn't have a conversation with Mr. Hubert Miller to ask him if he wants to continue, when I've told you already, this is a fantastic opportunity for people to serve their community. There are almost 19,000 people in this city, and it's great that Mr. Hubert Miller has served the city. There's no disrespect to Mr. Miller. I've thanked him personally many times. I stood on his front doorstep just a few months ago and thanked him for his service. This is not a slight to Mr. Hubert Miller. This isn't, and there's nothing against him. He hasn't done anything wrong. But this is an appointment. And what I'm asking council to realize is that this is part of the honor of this role as mayor, to be able to appoint people to these positions. It's not a matter of just checking the box and saying the same people that have done it before are going to keep on doing it so long as they haven't done anything wrong.
Mr. Nicely wants to say something.
Go ahead, Mr. Nicely.
I have to agree with you, because some of the people been here long, but we got times changing, and we need new ideals to progress. And if you got the administration and they have someone there for them to do their job the way they should do it, they should be able to recommend who they want to work with.
Yeah.
And also, what we're talking about, I'd make a proposal to cut 12 members out of council and make 6 and double their salary. And Cincinnati's only got 8.
Yeah. Okay. Let's save that for another night.
Okay.
My God.
Okay, so we've got another, let me say one other thing too. At the November 20th meeting, I mentioned this. I mentioned this to council, that we had these appointments coming up. I specifically asked if council had any recommendations of people that they knew of for these positions. I made it clear at that point that I planned on replacing the people who served on these boards. I received 0 recommendations from council Now, I will say this, though, too. I shouldn't say that. I lump everybody together. Mrs. Fetty, I remember when I first took this office, I was a little upset at the timing of things. I think it's bad timing that it's at the end of the term to be making these appointments. You know, I remember thinking that it was kind of a crummy thing that there were a bunch of appointments that were made right before I took office. So Mr. Kramer and I have been working on changing this legislation so that these appointments aren't made at the end of the term, but are rather made in the new term or the next mayor. I think that would be the better way to do things in the future. That being said, I've worked with Mrs. Fetty with these selections. So this isn't just me coming up with this on my own. We were working together and speaking to these candidates. So again, I would ask that council not refuse this on, you know, what you think might be, you know, disrespectful to the person who's served, whose term is up, but more so consider appointing new people to these committees. This board, this code enforcement board, Mr. Hahn, can you tell us how many times roughly how many times they've met in the last year? Once in the last year. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and are you going to present the name or do I present the name? The next one is Mr.
Actually, Mayor,
Gary
for point of order here, I think there would have to be a motion from the floor to make an amendment to this municipal order for the next name that you would present. I don't think it would be appropriate to go through the list of names with the municipal order that was on the published agenda. By statute, the executive authority has the power to make the appointment to the Code Enforcement Board and has 60 days after the term expires. Obviously, council has the ability to, and the statute requires them to ratify that appointment. If there is no agreement, so to speak, between council and the executive authority, then the Code Enforcement Board, after 60 days, would vote amongst themselves for that replacement.
Okay, so that last vote was for Mrs. Sterbling and Mr. Wilt?
I mean, that was the municipal order that was presented that had both names on it, and there was a motion and a second, and that municipal order that is on the agenda lost 7 to 4 or 7 to 5.
7 to 4, yeah.
And so that municipal order is no longer on the table. So council could bring this same municipal order back if there was a majority vote to do so, or they could make an amendment to this municipal order. Or we can, you know, the executive authority certainly could bring it up at the next meeting, which obviously you're not the executive authority at the next meeting.
Well, and some of these need to be made by the 31st.
Right, but the statute allows for there to be a 60-day vacancy period.
Okay.
And again, if there's not an agreement between council and the mayor, the Code Enforcement Board would make that selection.
Okay.
Every one of these statutes has a weird twist to it.
Okay. I see Mrs. Suedkamp has your hand raised.
Yeah, I want to make it perfectly clear that I think it's awesome that you found people for these positions. And the only one I really know well is Denise, and we've known each other for many, many years. Our children went to school together. I think the world of her family and herself, and I'm thrilled to death she's offered to you know, be on a committee. The bottom line for me is it's just a respectful thing to do to ask if these people are ready to give up their position. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I hate the thought that at your last meeting that we're going to argue about something over respect. I hate that. I'm being sincere about that.
So, I think I appreciate what you're saying, Mrs. Suedkamp. There's a certain amount of respect, too, to the position of mayor, and the word appointment, it's an appointment. And it's not confirming that the people still want to do the position or serve in the position necessarily. This is an opportunity for other people to get involved. The city's a much bigger place.
I'm just saying it's the right thing to do. Respectfully, it is the right thing to do. And it doesn't go any further than that or any deeper than that, as far as I'm concerned. It's just the respectful thing to do.
To me, it sounds more like an excuse.
An excuse for what?
I mean, had I called these people, I think you would still have an issue with this. It's a matter of the things changing. I know it's hard.
No, no. You've always misread me, Tyson. And we can discuss it here on open mic if you would like. I don't like your tactics. I never have, and I never will.
It's not tactics.
Yes, it is.
It's an appointment.
It's a manipulation.
Okay. Mrs. Kyle?
Yes, maybe I'm missing something here. When these people are appointed, how long is their term?
You read
Yeah, when they first initially were appointed, there were staggered terms based on the statute, but it's two-year terms.
Two-year
So subsequently,
terms.
they've been two-year terms.
Okay, so when you appoint these people, do you make it clear, like, hey, after 2 years, we can just get rid of you? I mean, that's the whole thing. It's not that we disrespect anything you're saying, and I admit I did not call and give you any names, and I appreciate that you went out and did your homework. But the bottom line is, I feel sorry for these guys. How long have they've been in? Obviously longer than 2 years. So all of a sudden, we're going to tell them, hey, 2 years, we don't want you anymore, even though you've been here. I don't know how many years they've been there, but I'm just saying, just something doesn't seem right there. And I'm not accusing you of doing anything wrong. I'm just saying that, maybe we should just table the appointments until Ms. Fetty becomes mayor. I know you probably conferred with her and she probably approves and everything, but that would be a gracious way to do it, and at the same time talk to these gentlemen and say, look, you've been here for this many years. We would like to share. We've got some people that are interested, so that they understand what's going on. Have you even talked to them at all, or is this going to be like a surprise?
I see and talk to Mr. Franks occasionally. We work with them as well. He's got a flooring company.
Yeah.
And I've taught, and like I said, I stood on Mr. Miller's front doorstep.
I just don't want to step on anybody's toes and say, smack, you're gone, And that's my point. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
I think you misunderstand that there's very tactful ways of having those conversations. I'm more than happy to meet with those gentlemen in person.
And that's what you should have done, Tyson.
Well, okay.
I'm just saying that maybe it would have been, maybe in retrospect, it may have been better to say something to them.
It was never my intention to go to them and say, do you want to continue to serve?
Yeah.
We know that.
Yeah, because if they say they want to continue, then what do you do? But what I'm saying is, if Ms. Fetty comes in,
My
she's a
intention has
new
always
mayor,
been to
and she can say,
put
hey, look,
different
I'm
people in
appointing new
place.
people. Would that look better? I mean, I don't know. I'm just making a suggestion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel bad for somebody that, like if I had volunteered to do something and I was there for like maybe 4 years, and then somebody else is appointed and I didn't know anything about it, I think I would have appreciated somebody saying something to me first, saying, look, you've served 4 years, we're really great that you did this, but it's time to move on, we need to appoint new people, hope you understand, or something like that to that order. I don't know. Maybe I'm all wrong.
Mr. Woodside, I saw you had a hand up. Would you mind come up to the podium? Okay, thanks. I mean, I certainly would welcome more people to speak up because, you know, maybe I'm all wet here, but,
Thank you. My name's Bill Woodside. I'm a resident of Erlanger. And my question, Mr. Mayor, is these current appointees, do they have an expiration on their appointment? Like
Yes.
the appointees that you're recommending, they have an expiration.
that's correct. It's 2
Do
years.
the current appointees have an expiration? So what's the big deal?
Right.
Has anybody in here ever been fired?
Well, and I can assure you that those men replaced other people as well, way back when. Thank you.
Tyson?
Yeah,
How many are you actually replacing?
2.
What did you say about how many names was on the list that you had to read?
Oh, I said I have got 55 people who would be willing to serve.
Okay, but you're only replacing 2. And how many committees are there that you're trying to supply?
Excuse me?
How many, are they both for code enforcement? Okay. And how many are on code enforcement now? 2?
5, I believe.
5.
Give me a second.
What is the status of those 5? Have they all been 2 years, or is it a staggered term?
It's staggered. So Mr. Viox will serve until this time next year. Mr. Dunhoft will serve until this time next year, and Ms. Dietz will serve until this time 2020.
Thank you for clearing that for me.
Thank you for asking. Mrs. Fetty.
A great deal of time went into developing that list of people. So we went around to 4,100 houses over the last 7 or 8 months, and we've met an amazing amount of people that want to get involved in their community. We compiled that list from people actually saying to us, please let us know how we can help. Anything we can do, please let us know. So we went to a couple of those people and presented them this option. This is an effort to get more people involved. This is not in an effort to step on people's toes. It's not that at all. This is an appointment, like Tyson has said, and we made this decision together. And the 2 people, Gary Wilt and Denise Sterbling, those are my choices. So they will be the same choices, whether it's me as mayor or Tyson as mayor.
Thank you. Mrs. Kyle?
Very quickly, I agree with Jessica. I agree with the mayor. It's your appointment, but I still think you need to go to these 2 gentlemen and say, look, your term expires, whatever it is, December, whatever, and we are appointing 2 new people because we would like to bring in fresh faces so that they know what's going on. That's all I'm asking. I mean, I just think it's a polite thing to do. It's respectful.
So if we have Mr. Franks and Mr. Miller here in the audience
We could ask them, yeah, and then they would
next
probably.
month, then, and they tell you that they don't mind being replaced.
Yeah.
And we have Mrs. Sterbling and Mr. Wilt in
Eh,
place.
That'd be perfect.
Absolutely.
That'd be perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not the people you picked.
Yeah, I mean,
It's the
they
one
know
you're
that their
replacing.
term's up, but it's just kind of nice if you kind of remind them your term is up and we're making new appointees.
Go ahead, Mr. Nice.
You ready for me?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know, actually.
It's a business, isn't it?
No.
This is not a business?
It's
For the
a
city?
It's a municipality, yeah, no. I mean, yes and no.
The city is not a business? So we just got someone that we like, and they're good people. We just keep them on, and we don't want no new blood, new ideals.
Well, their term expires, you can replace them when their term expires. Very simple.
I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, these are volunteer positions for the most part. Yeah. Yeah, trying to find people who are willing to serve is sometimes the hardest thing. You know, then getting them to show up is often difficult as well, you know.
Well, you got the Sterling you're talking about. I used to be a neighbor years ago. Mighty fine people.
Yeah.
I don't think you can find anyone else. You got new blood. You need new blood.
Okay, well, you know, Mr. Kramer gave me a note here that maybe we do a special meeting on the 18th. So who would vote on that? Does the new council vote, or does the old council vote? Oh, before the swearing.
Yeah, they're not effective.
Not this hard.
That way they all.
I think that's going to be too much. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. We'll do this, yeah, we've taken the vote, we've talked about it ad nauseum. Let's go ahead and reconsider this in January. Thank you, Mrs. Sterling and Mr. Stubblefield and Mr. Wilt for coming out this evening. Sorry about that. But we'll do this again in January. So the next item on the agenda is the,
OKI municipal
thank you, the
order. Yeah.
OKI representative.
So this is a municipal order of the City Council of the City of Erlanger, Kenton County, Kentucky, approving the reappointment of Councilmember Tom Cahill Jr. as the representative of the city to the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments effective January 1, 2019, and that would be for a one-year term.
All right, do we have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Pitts, second by Mrs. Suedkamp. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Next is the appointment of PDS representative and alternate.
This is a municipal order of the City Council of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, approving the reappointment of Councilmember Tyson Hermes as the representative of the city to the Northern Kentucky Planning Development Service, and the appointment of Councilmember Rebecca Reckers as the alternate effective January 1, 2019. Those would both be for one-year terms.
All right, any motion by Mrs. Suedkamp, second by Mrs. Fetty. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. All right, and the appointment of the Municipal Government League of Northern Kentucky representative.
This is a municipal order of the City Council of the City of Erlanger in Kenton County, Kentucky, approving the appointment of Councilmember Gary Meyer as the principal representative of the city to the Municipal Government League of Northern Kentucky, and Mayor Jessica Fetty as the alternate effective January 2019. And those both would be one-year terms beginning on January 1, 2019 and continuing through that year of December 31, 2019.
All right. Motion by Mrs. Fetty. Second by Mr. Burke. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Next is a municipal order regarding the appointment of the, oh, actually, this, we're going to change this on the agenda.
Right,
We-
it's not
This is
necessary.
not this is not a municipal order. The appointment of the District Board of Health representative, according to the bylaws of the Board of Health, the board member is a mayor in a city of more than 15,000 people. So it's automatically Mrs. Fetty. If she chooses to appoint someone else in her stead, that's her choice next year or next term. So that's not something that we would vote on.
All right, last.
Is the municipal order regarding the surplus property of a school building.
Yeah, and I'm going to read it, and then I apologize I didn't mention it in my attorney's report. It's a little unusual. It's a municipal order of the City of Erlanger and Kenton County, Kentucky, making the written determinations required by KRS 82083 for the sale or other disposition of property owned by the city. But this is a little bit of a unique surplus. This is a surplus primarily because 20 to 30 years ago, the Arnett Elementary School was never transferred to the Erlanger-Ellesmere School District. So back in the 60s, when this was done, schools could not bond themselves, so they used cities as the vehicles to bond themselves. So the city of Erlanger actually took title to Arnett Elementary, the bonds were issued, and sometime very long ago, those bonds were long paid off, and the city should have at that point transferred the school back to the school. And I'm not sure how this actually, how did they find out this?
I discovered it when we got a 911 bill.
So you discovered it?
For the,
you didn't want to pay a 911 bill on Arnett Elementary?
It was $75, and I said no.
So, due to the economic frugality of Mr. Kramer, we have determined that we had to quitclaim Arnett Elementary back to the Erlanger-Ellesmere School District. So that's what the purpose of this surplus is.
It's basically the building alone. I wrote the descriptions. They didn't want to encumber all the land where the school is in the bond issue, so we wrote a description around the actual physical building, 2 feet outside the building, and that's all that we're transferring.
Wow.
So, if we could have a motion and
All right,
second.
motion by Mrs. Kyle. Second by Mrs. Skidmore. I saw your hand first. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, motion carried. All right. Yeah, I will. I'm working on it right now. All right, if there's no other items to discuss, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn. Motion by Mrs. Kyle, second by Mrs. Skidmore. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Meeting adjourned.